We are meant to be experiencing this dimension exactly as we are. Each one of us that came here is meant to be experiencing this dimension exactly as we are. We desire to achieve higher states of consciousness, to experience ourselves as multidimensional beings. But our one true purpose is actually to fully align into this dimension. Find, rediscover, remember our soul purpose and the purpose work that we're meant to do and the gift that we're here to bring and deliver to this planet. And each and every one of us has a gift that only we have, right? It is unique. It is as unique as our own energy signatures, this gift that we're here to deliver to the world. So our job is to come here, to align with this dimension fully, to remember why we came here, and then to fully integrate the alignment of the experience in this dimension with our soul purpose, deliver that work in the world with passion and live fully. That is why we're here to experience this third dimension. This is Leah Steele, aka The Wealth Witch, and this is my podcast. I'm here to activate you to remembrance of your divine birthright to be wealthy in all areas of your life. This podcast is for people ready to have controversial conversations about the financial control, manipulation, and tyranny that faces humanity today. I'm gonna live in freedom, freedom. I'm gonna live my destiny. I'm gonna live my freedom, freedom. I'm gonna live, the time is right now. The Wealth Witch. It's for the people who are ready to wake up, deconstruct their wealth programming, and free themselves from the financial slavery consciousness that serves the global financial agenda. I'm committed to realizing a new global wealth paradigm where economic freedom is the reality and where you get to design and live the life of your dreams. Now let's do the damn thing. I really want to dive into and give some explanations of who we are as multidimensional beings. And then we're going to talk specifically about the third dimension, the seventh dimension, and the ninth dimension. So to give you a little background that will be brief, I believe that I had coronavirus in December of 2019. I had traveled to Malaysia and I came back and I was very, very ill, had all of the symptoms of coronavirus aside from I'm not sure if I lost smell or taste because I had completely lost my appetite and I wasn't really eating. I was sick for about 3 weeks, had all of the chest congestion, difficulty breathing, fevers and body aches, and was very, very ill. My husband also got sick at that time, and my older son also got sick, though his illness only lasted for a couple of days. So I really believe that we had whatever the original strain before the mutations started occurring of coronavirus in December of 2019. I kind of was operating and going through life being like, I've got antibodies because I was at that point, I was emotionally testing in. It was a confirmation that I had coronavirus, and I felt like I just wasn't concerned or worried about it. So I have been on a very, very intense spiritual journey over the last 3 months that has included some plant medicine ceremonies, has included me really diving deeply into some patterns and identities that I was ready to let go of and I was ready to release. And it really has been probably the deepest personal transformation and process that I've been through in the last 3 years. So it was really intense. And on the other side of that, I had scheduled to go in and get a breast lift. I nursed my last son, Jack, for 3.5 years. And I was ready to do some cosmetic alterations to my body that I felt really, really good about and was really excited about, honestly. And so I had surgery, and then I'm fairly certain, contracted coronavirus in the hospital. I hadn't really been anywhere else for the week before the surgery. I hadn't gone anywhere from my home, and then, basically haven't been anywhere since. So I kind of have been sequestered in my home. So I've been in, I would say full recovery from the virus for over a week now, but have still had lingering symptoms, headaches, and cognitive dissonance, kind of like jumbled mind stuff, which you'll understand in a minute as well, since. So while I was in the virus, though, I entered into a very, very deep state of depression and despair, and was hearing voices that were not my own, that were telling me horrible things were going to happen to me and my family, from the illness, and if I wasn't vaccinated. And I really started, and then once I actually realized that those weren't my voices, and that was not the voice of spirit, and that was not the voice of any of my ancestors or guides or guardians, I really started to consciously tap into the energy of the virus. And through that tapping into the energy of the virus, and then some guidance from a couple of my spiritual teachers that I work very closely with, I was able to track the energy, follow the energy, and receive some information on how we are being controlled and manipulated by not only the virus, but the vaccine. So that's actually the information that I am going to share with you today. So that's just a little bit about how I got here. It was really on the other side of that event of me having the virus that this event was born. And so, originally I was planning on doing an event that was going to be just a launch event where I was going to talk about the wealth alchemy work. We were going to really dive deeply into what Ouroboros is. However, I got the virus. I got sick in the middle of the launch. And this event came through as a freestanding event that was about deconstructing programming and conditioning around this virus and around this vaccine, and educating and informing people about what is going on so that they can be empowered to make choices about what they choose to do with their bodies. I really want you to know that I have no agenda about whether or not you get vaccinated. I definitely want you to have a choice in that. I believe in informed medical consent. I believe in having a choice about what's put in our body, particularly when it comes to chemicals and experimental drugs. I really, really want everyone on this planet to have an option of whether or not they want to take this vaccine or not. So that's the only agenda that I really have. However, personally, my personal choice is that I'm not even going to go into that because I don't think it's relevant, because what I just said is very true externally. I really want to know more about and see the efficacy of this vaccine, because I don't believe that it's coming from a source that is of the highest and best good for humanity. And I don't believe it's coming from a source that is in right relation with the human experience on this planet. So we'll talk more about that. But if you've been vaccinated, if you choose to be vaccinated, that's your choice. But I want you to be educated and have all of the information so you can walk into that decision with your eyes wide open. And also, as Sigourney was saying, maybe have some options for some things that you can do to build and boost your immune system, but also to understand through the content I'm about to share with you how this is affecting us on a consciousness level. Because again, you are the most powerful creator in your reality. And your consciousness is more powerful than you could even imagine. We have the ability to transmute most anything that comes into our physical body and into our systems. And so if you understand how this is impacting us, how this is affecting us, where the blocks are happening, where the distortions, mutations, and manipulations are happening, you're better armed to go out and deal with this pandemic that we're facing right now. Whether you're looking at that pandemic as a pandemic of coronavirus, or you're looking at that pandemic as the true pandemic that I believe it is, which is the fear pandemic. So the first thing is that we simultaneously exist in many, if not all, dimensions. Our divine immortal soul, which is our consciousness, exists simultaneously in many, if not all, dimensions. And our experiences in one dimension alter and affect all of our other selves that are existing in other dimensions. So I like to think of the divine immortal soul. So this is called like our higher self, our oversoul. I refer to it as the divine immortal soul because that's the information that I was given. So our divine immortal soul is infinite in nature and it's immortal, right? So our divine immortal soul that's infinite in nature is not going to just be having one experience in the third dimension as, like, my divine immortal soul isn't going to be having one experience in the third dimension as Leah Steele. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? Because the purpose of that divine immortal soul is to grow and expand and learn and evolve. And so it's going to be having multiple experiences simultaneously. So it doesn't mean that this version of me that exists in the third dimension on planet Earth is a fraction of something greater. I'm a whole, but I'm a whole that makes up a greater whole. And all of those wholes that make up the greater whole that is my divine immortal soul are all connected together. Okay? So when we have an experience in one dimension, so when I have an experience in 3D, it also affects my fifth dimensional self. So deja vu, for example, let's talk about deja vu. So deja vu is literally the conscious experiencing of more than one dimension at a time. When you get that feeling of like, oh, I've done this before. Oh, I've been here before. That is you consciously experiencing more than one dimension at a time. So how do we access our multidimensional selves? Well, most frequently in our dream states. And especially those of us that are not actively practicing spiritual evolution, we access our multidimensional selves in our dream states. But things like astral travel, meditation, all of the things that raise us into higher states of consciousness and are what allow us to embrace ourselves as multidimensional beings and travel multidimensionally. So I want to talk a little bit before we move on about higher dimensions and lower dimensions and what that means and the absolutes and the duality that we assign to that as 3D beings. So higher dimensions are not better than lower dimensions, okay? They just vibrate at a higher frequency, and higher dimensions have more of an ability to access. So if we're operating or vibrating at 7th dimension, 8th dimension, 9th dimension, we have more ability in that version of ourselves to access the multidimensional versions of us than we do at the 3rd dimension. The dimensions are not linear. And so that's one thing I really want you to try to onboard. It's very difficult for us because this plane, the 3rd dimension, is linear. And so for me to even ask you that is quite difficult. But we're going to talk more about the 3rd dimension and about the absolutes that we assign to things in that dimension. But for the purpose of this conversation that we're going to have today, I really want you to embrace the idea that the higher dimensions are not better, the lower dimensions are not worse. It's about density. So the lower dimensions are more heavily dense. The higher dimensions are less dense. And so as a result of that density being less at the higher dimensions, we are more easily able to access our other states of consciousness, our other dimensional selves, and to travel multidimensionally. As we become less dense, as we become, as the matter begins to become less dense, it's easier for us to travel. Higher dimensional beings and states of consciousness essentially allow us to experience more of our total self. So as we go on a spiritual journey and we tap into our spiritual awakening, like, we have this idea that we want to raise our state of consciousness and we want to access higher dimensional states of being. That's an interesting concept, and it is a bit of a catch-22 because the reason that we're here is actually to have a 3D experience. But when we tap into those higher dimensions and we access the version of ourselves that is existing in those other dimensions, and we access those higher states of consciousness, it simply allows us to access more of our total self. So our consciousness can actually exist in any dimension that it focuses on. It can exist at a higher dimension density than our physical body. So our physical body is here in the third dimension, right? So our consciousness can simultaneously exist in our physical body in the third dimension and in our consciousness in 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9D. But it can also, our consciousness can also exist in 2D or 1D. So it's not mutually exclusive. Like you don't have to be, your consciousness doesn't have to be in 3D and your physical body in 3D. So what that's called when your consciousness moves from 3D or higher, it's called transcendence, right? And it just gives us a different point of view or experience than the one that we're having in our third dimensional reality. But I want to be clear that when we talk about shifting dimensions, we're not talking about our physical body. We are talking about our consciousness. Shifting our physical body is called transmutation. And it is, if it happens at all for people, if it's ever happened for anyone, some believe the Buddha did it, some believe that Jesus Christ did it, but if it happens at all, it's extremely rare, right? It is not rare for us to transcend through our consciousness. It is extremely rare for us to transmutate our physical being into an alternate dimension. So we are talking about, throughout this entire thing that we're discussing, we're talking about our mental, spiritual, emotional, energetic body, our consciousness, okay? So as I mentioned, the divine immortal soul exists in all dimensions simultaneously. And our experience in one affects all others. So that means that when we have an expansion or we have something amazing happen to us in the 3D, it affects our fifth dimensional self. Likewise, if we have something challenging, we come up against an obstacle, we have a difficulty in one dimension, it creates an experience or an effect in a effect's actually not a good word. It creates an experience in an alternate dimension. You'll understand why effect's not a good word in just a minute when we start talking about the 3D. We are meant to be experiencing this dimension exactly as we are. Each one of us that came here is meant to be experiencing this dimension exactly as we are. We desire to achieve higher states of consciousness, to experience ourselves as multidimensional beings. But our one true purpose is actually to fully align into this dimension. It's to fully align into this dimension and, find, rediscover, remember our soul purpose and the purpose work that we're meant to do and the gift that we're here to bring and deliver to this planet. And each and every one of us has a gift that only we have, right? It is unique. It is as unique as our own energy signatures, this gift that we're here to deliver to the world. So our job is to come here, to align with this dimension fully, to remember why we came here, and then to fully integrate the alignment of the experience in this dimension with our soul purpose, deliver that work in the world with passion and live fully. That is why we're here to experience this third dimension. And so, I think that 3D gets a bad rap because we're all trying to expand out of this reality that we're living in without really recognizing and realizing we've got really good shit here. There's a lot of really incredible things that happen at the third dimensional level that aren't happening in those higher states of consciousness or those other dimensions. And so, I also want to introduce here to you that the higher the dimension, the higher the frequency, right? The lower the dimension, the lower the frequency. So if we think about, that's just another way to think about the scale is based on frequency. And there's no frequency that's good or bad, right? They just are. And so, those of you that are Healy people know the power of frequency and also know that it's just as important that we balance and bring back into balance our lower frequencies as it is that we balance and bring into alignment and resonance our higher frequencies. So for the purpose of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about 3D, 7D, and 9D because this is what came through to me from the virus as I tapped into the consciousness of the virus. So what's happening? We're going to talk about our experience of these dimensions. We are going to talk about how we are being blocked or inhibited from accessing that version of ourselves And also how that dimensional energy is being used to control and manipulate us and to create distortions and mutations on this planet. So let's talk about 3D first, where we live, this amazing reality that we're communicating with each other through, right? With a little bit of help from 6-dimensional consciousness, because we're definitely in a state and field of consciousness inside this container that is, we've activated the spiritual highway, if you will. So we're all connected to each other. We're being held in a container. It's literally a technology container, but we've tapped into our soul tethers that we each hold to each other, and we've activated those inside this container. So we're existing in a 3D reality during this event, a little boosted by a 6-dimensional consciousness that we've activated in the container. I'm not going to talk about 6D. I love talking about 6D, but I'm actually not going to talk about it because I could literally do an entire hour-long content session on 6D itself. Okay, so what is 3D? 3D is the experience that we have on this planet, and it is based in the idea and the reality of linear space and time. So what do we have here? And it's about duality and polarity. Those are the gifts of this dimension. So what do we have here? Well, first and foremost, we have the self and the not self, right? I'm myself, you're my not self. So this dimension is all about the individual, about individuation. It's what we come here to learn. So we have me and we have you, and we have good and we have bad, and we have right and we have wrong, and we have male and we have female. And the most important concept or principle that we are here to learn and experience is cause and effect. And that's why I said that wasn't a good reference when I was talking about when you experience something in one dimension, it creates an alternate experience in another dimension. It was a better way to say that, not it creates an effect. Because cause and effect is actually something that is relative to the third dimension, and not any dimension higher. So this is where we experience the creation of the ego, is in the third dimension. And we have massive, massive attachments to what is real, what we perceive and believe to be real and not real. So most of the collective believes that other dimensions or experiences of their multidimensional self are not real. So the majority of the collective believes that when they dream at night, it's their imagination, or it's not real, right? Real is right now, I'm in my waking state, I'm sitting at a table, I'm sitting in this chair, I'm speaking to you through this computer. This is real. Majority of the collective does not believe that the multidimensional experiences that we experience 24 hours a day in our linear concept of time, in our waking and sleep states, that those things aren't real. So chew on that for a minute, because it's really interesting and fascinating that as multidimensional beings, we hold on to attachments of reality in the third dimension. I'm going to just pause for a second. How is everyone doing with this content so far? Is it landing? I just want to do a quick check-in, because I know that this can be a lot, and we're about to go even more out there. So why do we come to the third dimension? Well, we come to the third dimension for spiritual growth and expansion, because we need to have an experience of our own individuation, of our ego, and of duality and polarity. Because how can we experience oneness if we haven't experienced that, right? So, there's a lot of people that talk about that Earth is actually this quite coveted experience to have. Third dimensional experience for different levels of souls and beings is actually quite coveted experience, because we learn so much, we grow so much, we expand so much by living and existing in this plane of reality. So 3D is our experience of 3D, and our 3D reality is literally our daily waking state of consciousness right now. most of us, probably all of us, are literally experiencing a 3D reality right now because we are in our daily waking state of consciousness. One of the things about the third dimension that I think we take so for granted is we have a beautiful, beautiful gift of diversity here. Because we're focused on our individuation and we're focused on ourselves. And as a result of that, we get to experience so many other things in their unique energy signature. Once we start transcending this level of consciousness and we move into oneness, we don't see that diversity because we're in oneness, right? We don't get to experience that very, very unique and separate, what we perceive to be separate energy signature of other beings because we start to feel that universal oneness. And so diversity is this beautiful, beautiful gift that we're given here that's used against us, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But so time is linear, obviously, here. And, the other thing that's really beautiful about the third dimension, but also is part of the reason why we're so easily able to be controlled, manipulated, programmed, and conditioned is that the unique perspectives of this dimension, those things that we've just talked about, allow us to experience intense emotions and desires. So along with those intense emotions comes the ability to be crippled by emotions like fear and lack and scarcity and worry. So, it's the gifts of the dimension are also the curses of the dimension. And because we are living in a state of consciousness that there's such extreme duality, diversity, polarity, we are able to be controlled and manipulated with that polarity. And the polarity is what creates the ability for us to tap into our emotions and experience them so intensely. So this is how we're controlled. So unique things that exist in the third dimension and on this planet are politics, races, and class systems, caste systems, right? And all of that division that's created through politics, race, class, and caste systems is possible because of the density of our experience in this reality. That is what gives them access to us. So this is the access point. The third dimension is the access point. They are able to get access because of the reality that we're existing in. So this is interesting, right? Because it's like, then we want to transcend third dimensional consciousness because we want to move above being able to be controlled and manipulated. That would be like the first thought that you would have, right? No, because we're here for a reason. We're here to experience this. We're here to experience all the joy, the sadness, the grief, the happiness, the ecstasy that comes along with this experience. Now, do I believe we need to be tapping into higher states of consciousness to combat how we're being controlled and manipulated? Absolutely. But not from a place of, I want to transcend third dimensional consciousness. This is where we live. This is the experience that we've chosen to have. And it's really time for us to start embracing it. And those of us that work in higher states of consciousness in higher dimensions through channeling or, divine download or, that are operating in higher in the chakra system. If you're looking at that frame of reference or that framework, many of us exist here for a long time on this planet. And we're like, all we're trying to do is get out of here. And we're not allowing ourselves to have the beautiful experience of being here on earth. And I truly believe that we are here to experience the union of the divine immortal soul and our humanity. So we're here to fully recognize and realize our divinity and fully recognize and realize our humanity and embrace our 3D experience while preparing ourselves to transcend into higher states of consciousness where we have more access to ourselves as a multidimensional being. So that's what I think we're here for. So 3D is the access point for this control and manipulation. So now we're going to talk about 7D. So one of the important things that I need to talk to you about when it comes to seventh dimensional consciousness and the seventh dimension and the ninth dimension is that the access point or anchor point or seat of the dimension on this planet is in India. There have been lots of thoughts and theories about why India has been hit so hard by the virus. It is my belief, and it is the information that has been given to me, that this is why, because it is the seat of the dimension on this planet. And it is the access point for that level of consciousness. So 70 and 90, both dimensions that we're talking about, the seat of the dimension is in India. So what happens in the seventh dimension? Well, the seventh dimension allows us to surrender ego-based fear. So our ability to access our seventh dimensional self allows us to surrender ego-based fear. Well, the beings that have created this virus certainly do not want us accessing the seventh dimensional version of ourselves that allows us to surrender ego-based fear, because they are fueling this thing with fear. Seventh dimensional consciousness also allows us to realize the limitations of the ego. The ego is what is being used to control and manipulate us. That is what they are. So they're accessing our ego in third dimensional consciousness, right? So they don't want us connecting to our seventh dimensional selves, because if we were connected to our seventh dimensional selves, we would be receiving the gifts of that dimension, and we would have the ability to surrender ego-based fear and recognize the limitations of the ego. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that the overriding theme of the seventh dimension is hope. And the seventh dimension, like the gifts of the seventh dimension, allow us to transmute denser energy without losing hope. And hope is what combats fear. And so they are cutting us off from our power supply to our hope. And that is why people are falling into despair. That's why people are being overcome by fear and depression and allowing themselves to be controlled and manipulated, because they have no hope. They're being cut off from their hope. So other gifts and resonances of this dimension are joy, contentment, and acceptance. So when we're cut off from the seventh dimensional version of ourselves and the gifts of the seventh dimension, we're also cut off from joy, contentment, and acceptance. Acceptance of each other, which is why you're seeing all this division. We've got this literal great divide that's happening because we're being cut off from acceptance of each other and of each other's points of view, which really is a gift of the third dimension. When we learn to harness and enjoy and recognize the gifts of the third dimension, we recognize and realize that our diversity and our duality is the gift. It's why we're here, right? So they're now, but that's supported by seventh dimensional consciousness and acceptance. And so we're being cut off from the acceptance part. So seventh dimension also allows us to exit from all planes of matter. And so it is said that when we cross over, when we die, we experienced, the seventh dimension is all about harmonics. It is a vibration and frequency and sound dimension. And so it's about harmonics. And so it is said that when we cross over from this lifetime, that we hear the perfect resonance of the seventh dimension, which means that we have fulfilled and embraced our experience, our full human experience of life on Earth. And that's an interesting thing, because there are people that are ripped from the planet in one way or another, or experience death in a way that they don't hear the harmonics of the seventh dimension. And so it would be said that those people come back and they repeat a lifetime here in the third dimension, because they haven't fully embraced and learned what they were here to learn. At the seventh dimension, when we access seventh dimensional consciousness, our soul, that divine immortal soul, can vibrate at its full infinite potential. It's the first dimension where the soul can vibrate at its full infinite potential. So think about that, being cut off from that. Then we don't have the ability to embrace that we have infinite potential. We don't have the ability to embrace that we are the most powerful creators in our reality because we've been cut off from that gift. One of the things that we do when we access seventh dimensional consciousness, whether while we're astral traveling or in our sleep states, is that we actually harmonize our energy field. Because of the powerful harmonics of this dimension, we access this dimension all the time to harmonize our energy field. It's literally like the seventh dimension is a Healy, right? Picture it like a Healy. Like the Healy is accessing seventh dimensional frequency to harmonize our bioenergetic field, right? That is what the seventh dimension does. It allows us to retain hope in times of despair. The other thing that happens in the seventh dimension and when we access the seventh dimension is we have the ability to reweave the meridian systems of the body. This is important. And there are healing aspects of the seventh and ninth dimension that are so important to know when it comes to what's happening with this virus. Okay. Seventh dimension is where we reweave and correct the meridian systems of the body in the 3D. Okay. So if you've worked with me, and I know that there's many of you that are new to me, but if you've worked with me that I work with the meridian systems and the organs of the body in my modality emotional resonance clearing, which you just experienced with Laura. And this is the seventh dimension and the ninth dimension are actually dimensions of consciousness that we use to do the deep healing and transmutation that we do using that modality. So I wasn't that surprised when I realized, if we're using it for good, certain beings could certainly be using it for bad because they're cutting us off from that ability to tap into those gifts, right? Here is the piece that really ties into the thing that Sigourney was talking about earlier, which is that in the seventh dimension regulates the transfer or the change or the exchange of matter to spirit. The relationship of matter to spirit is regulated in the seventh dimension. So this is how they're creating that split from the body, the physical body, the matter, and the soul and the spirit, and essentially creating walking zombies. Because when the physical body is split from the soul, then what do you have, right? Night of the Walking Dead, basically, in real life form. It's interesting to think about what happens to the spirit if it's separated from, if the spirit is separated from matter in a third dimensional reality, what happens to the spirit, right? Because it's chosen this vehicle for its consciousness to have this 3D experience. And it is through this is the chariot of the divine immortal soul in this reality. And so if the soul or the spirit is forcibly separated from the matter, the physical body, what happens to the spirit? Because the body becomes a zombie. So this is where they're creating the split and they're blocking the hope and they're making it so that we can't harmonize and heal through the balancing of our energy field. And they are making it difficult for us to reweave and heal the meridian systems of our bodies. Okay, so that's 7D. What does it mean, the seat of the dimensions in India on this planet? Okay, so there is dimensional access. All of the dimensions have access points on this planet. And there's a lot that we could go into there, but that has to do with intergalactic seeding of this planet, of different beings and how different beings access this planet, and portals and energy ley lines. That, again, that's a whole other hour-long talk in and of itself. By the way, if this dimensional stuff is really resonating with you, this is a big, big part of what we do in Ouroboros. So we actually go in and clear dimensions 0 through 13, which means what we're doing is we're enabling you in your 3D physical self to access those dimensional versions of you and the gifts from each of those dimensions. We get rid of any programming and conditioning that prevents you from tapping into that. And as a result of that, we step into an experience in the 3D that enables us to have a more fulfilling, more wealthy experience of life. So I know that there's a lot of new people, so I'm going to say something that probably everyone else is sick of me hearing, but the word wealthy literally means well and healthy. And so to me, my wealth work, my wealth repatterning, my wealth consciousness work, yes, it's about finances. And yes, increased flow of money and custodianship of money and accumulation of money and acquiring financial wealth is a byproduct of the work that we do. But the work that we do in this wealth repatterning program is really more about stepping into greater states of worthiness and deserving. And as a result of that, and accessing these multi-dimensional versions of ourselves and being able to access the gifts from those dimensions. As a result of that, we have a more full experience of our third dimensional reality because we are able to be wealthy in all areas of our life. So that's what Ouroboros is about ultimately. But we do clearing at each dimensional level. We clear certain emotions, we clear certain concepts, and we free you from the programming and conditioning that keeps you from accessing those versions of yourself. So that's a big part of the work that we do in Ouroboros. So each dimension has an access point here on this planet. And it is how communication happens with this planet. There are it's where the spiritual vortexes are of this planet. Lots of the dimension points are through those spiritual vortexes. And it has a lot to do with energy lines and ley lines. So the mutations and distortions are happening through the portal, the access point to this planet. Okay. We're going to talk about this in a minute because this is off-planetary control and manipulation that's happening. And they are accessing this planet for that control and manipulation through India, because that is the access point of the 7th and the 9th dimension. And that's where they have to control and manipulate to do the things that we've been talking about, like stopping the ability to harmonize our energy fields, blocking the hope, blocking our ability to reweave our meridian systems. The 9th dimension, this is where things are probably going to start to get a little out there for some of you. So what spiritual tradition or belief system does this multidimensional concept come from? Interestingly enough, most spiritual traditions, aside from Christianity that kind of has adopted a little bit of a hybrid, but most spiritual traditions have multidimensional frameworks. So if you are a student of theology or religion and you begin to really dive deeply into where did we come from before this and what is our experience here on this planet, most systems have multidimensional frameworks. And for me, I have studied lots and lots of different spiritual traditions and practices. This is Ascension Theory. I mean, one of the things that's so fascinating, so if we just talk about like intergalactic activities or, what the relationship is of the human being living on Earth to the stars or to the other planets, like one of the things that you'll see is like throughout all these different cultures across the planet, you have descriptions and experiences of beings from this planet interacting with beings from Sirius. And a lot of that information is oppressed and hidden. But when you really dive deeply into the cultures and you look back at the pictographs and the hieroglyphs and, you dive deeply into the history of the cultures, whether it's Egyptian or Native American, you start to see these interactions these interplanetary interactions that are depicted, right? And talked about in literature and depicted in, cave paintings or tombs that are dug up. Like you see these depictions of interplanetary information and technology exchange primarily, right? And the other piece that we see a lot, if you dive deeply into cultures from Aboriginal to Native American, is Palladian interaction and experience. And so this comes from lots and lots of study on my part of, when I started my spiritual reawakening, I started by diving deeply into my ancestry, into the cultures connected to my ancestry. So that was Africa. That was my Native American ancestry and lineage. That was my Celtic ancestry and lineage. And so I started researching and practicing spiritual traditions from those parts of the world that I came from. And I literally just spent years going down the rabbit hole into all these different philosophies and ideas and thoughts, and I've studied Ascension Theory, and not a lot of Ascension Theory actually resonates with me. And so this is a bit of a combination of like everything that I've experienced, but also just, in my journeying through plant medicine and in connecting to my divine immortal soul, the information that I've been given as the reality of our experience on this physical plane. Okay, so you guys are good to move into 9D. You want to get out there? Okay, so let's move into the 9th dimension, because this is really where this is the important pieces that I think will like bring it all together and bring it all home for you. So what does the 9th dimension rule? Well, 9th dimension is the place where intergalactic activities happen, and the 9th dimension interconnects galaxies. So one of the things that I actually was really afraid to tap into, and I don't know why, well, I do know why, it's because I was being manipulated with 7th dimensional energy and blocked from my 7th dimensional self. But I had a lot of fear when this information started coming through and I started tapping into the consciousness of the virus. I had a lot of fear around asking if this was on planetary or off planetary. And so I finally got over it and pushed myself through it and asked, and the confirmation came through that this is off planetary control and manipulation. So this control and manipulation and this agenda, it is coming from off planet. It is coming from another system, and it's coming from another universal system. So it is not even inside our universal system. It was created on planet. So it wasn't just dropped here from the heavens or through the dimensions. It was created on planet. The virus was created on planet, but it was created on planet by off-planetary beings. I don't want to go too deeply into the seeding of the races here and of this planet and how that's happened. But, look, I think that we would be really, really remiss. And, again, this is it is our 3rd dimension experience to believe that these other things aren't real, right? And to believe that we're so focused on the self that there must only be us, right? There must only be this one race of human beings. But to me, when we start to think about even what we know about our universe and our galaxy, to imagine that we're the only ones out there is insanity. To imagine that other more advanced technological races and beings aren't here walking among us right now is insanity. And that, in our experience, we look at that from our lens of duality and we say, okay, well, they're either good or they're bad. When the truth is, they're not good or bad. Do they have an agenda that serves the highest and best interest of humanity? Some do, some don't. And so what we're experiencing here now is off-planetary beings that have an agenda of manipulating the beings on this planet for a reason. So I want to talk about the 9th dimension so that you can maybe understand those reasons. So 9th dimension is responsible for the evolution of the galaxies. And so the beings responsible for this, they do not want the evolution that is currently on the way and coming for humanity and our planet. So we are evolving as beings. We are in a big, pivotal time in the evolution of this being, right? The beings that are on this planet are getting ready to go through a huge period of evolution, and it's time. And we've been attempting that for a long time. And right now we have, for about the last 8 years, we have had beings being born onto this planet that are here to facilitate this evolution. So beings that are here currently that have been slowly coming for the last 8 years are now coming full force and have been coming for the last couple of years. So new souls that are arriving on this planet, they are here to activate the ascension and evolution of our species. And these beings that have created this virus, they don't want that. They want to enslave these new evolved beings that are landing on our planet right now. They want to enslave them because they do not want the evolution of this planet. I'm not exactly clear why. Like, I don't fully understand why. I just know that this is what's happening. And literally, yeah, this is what I was able to track energetically as I tapped into the consciousness of the virus. And most spiritual leaders on this planet will tell you that we are in a war for the soul of humanity right now, and that we have been for some time. And many will tell you that we've chosen to evolve. We've already made the choice to evolve. It's part of why these beings are coming to these evolved, advanced beings are coming to activate us into that next level evolution. But there are beings on this planet and there are off-planetary beings that don't want that evolution to happen. Likely because they are receiving some type of energy from us. One of the things that Sigourney was talking about that I'm probably going to come back and touch on later in this event is discernment. It's really important that we be discerning in who we're allowing into our energy fields right now, because not every being on this planet has an agenda that is in right relation to the reason that you came to this planet, and is not in right relation to your evolution. So it's really important that we be protecting of our energy fields and that we be discerning in who we're allowing into our energy fields, because absolutely there are beings that are harvesting our energy, and want to continue to harvest our energy and want to continue to harvest from, that are feeding off the fear that has raised and heightened to the level that it has raised and heightened to. Does it make those beings bad? Again, I think that's a third dimensional reality. It means that they have an agenda that serves what they believe is their right relation to their evolution, and that we serve a purpose. It could be quite similar to how we harvest meat on this planet, because we believe at some level, some of the beings of this planet believe that it is the right relation to the evolution of our planet is to eat other species, right? So if we think that's okay for other species on this planet, then why wouldn't other beings from other star systems or universal systems think it was okay to harvest us on an energetic level? We're here on Earth experiencing a very physical reality where we eat matter, right? As we move into higher states of consciousness and we evolve through multidimensional experiences, we're not eating physical matter, but we're thriving and surviving off of energy, right? So if you make those associations, then it kind of makes sense. So the beings responsible for this, they do not want the evolution of humanity or of our planet or of our galaxy. They are manipulating our access and our experience of these dimensions and blocking us from the energies of these dimensions and of ourselves, the versions of ourselves that exist in those dimensions. So if the seventh dimension, we talked about once we've graduated, I guess you could say graduated, seventh dimensional energy, you're ready to evolve your experience on Earth, right? Ninth dimensional energy is being ready to evolve your experience in this universe, right? So being able to access other universal systems. So this isn't coming from our universal system. This is coming from a universal system outside our universal system. And that system does not want us to be able to evolve outside of this system and be able to come and go, because that's what ninth dimensional energy enables you to do, is come and go. Once you've mastered that ninth dimensional energy and you're existing fully in that ninth dimensional self, you have the ability to come and go from the universe. And they don't want that. The ninth dimension is the dimension of quarks. And quarks are what allow our multidimensionality. I'm not going to go into a science lesson, but if you want to go learn, there's like some really cool videos actually they're like animated cartoons on quantum physics. And I really like them. Maybe we'll try to find them and drop a couple in the group for you guys. Because I think they really help to explain some of this like more advanced stuff that like Sean intellectually can wrap his head around all of this stuff so well. And it's like, it takes me, I have to study it over and over and over and over and over in order to, understand it myself. And then it's so difficult for me to explain these advanced scientific concepts to people. Sean does it really well. Like he takes advanced information and then like puts it in bite-sized pieces and then is able to deliver it. I'm sure you guys saw some of that this morning, but he's in actually the phase 2 program, Wealth Alchemy program. It's called Phoenix, which is the program that you do after Ouroboros. We are diving deeply into the tree of life and we are clearing the Sephiro, the spheres and the centers, the energetic centers in the tree of life. And he's like breaking down, something that like I've been trying to figure out how to teach for months. He's like, oh yeah, I got it. Comes in and like delivers this like epic, like translation of it. And everybody's like, oh, I totally get it. I'm like, if I explained it to you, you would not have understood it like that. So, it's the dimension of quarks. So quarks are what allow our multidimensionality. And so this is being blocked, especially by the vaccine. So the vaccine is blocking our ability to be multidimensional beings. So they allow us to be multidimensional. And ninth dimension is interesting because it is where the shadow side of the ninth dimension is that it is where regulation of intergalactic violations of spiritual law happen. Anywhere where regulation happens or occurs is an energy that you can tap into, feed that, right? Or to, there's regulation of violation of spiritual law in the ninth dimension. So if we are cutting a species of beings off from that energy, then you would execute those violations by doing that. You would be able to execute undetected violations of spiritual law. So what are high level violations of spiritual law? Well, destruction and annihilation of one race, species, culture by another. And so this is where the mutations and like literally like mutations of species, decimations of species, destruction and annihilation of species, cultures, races, like that is violation of spiritual law. So that piece is really important because that is really absolutely what is happening here. So the ninth dimension is the dimension that's accessed when a soul transitions from one life to the next. Death. Right? Ninth dimension. So you can see how manipulating or distorting this energy could be creating all of the things that we're experiencing right now on this planet. One of the things that's important here that I want to talk about is the healing piece so I talked to you a little bit about the healing piece with the meridian systems and not in the seventh dimension. Here, ninth dimension is how we create brain to body healing. This is why ninth dimensional consciousness and the gifts from the ninth dimension are so important in emotional clearing work, because what we do is we create a brain to body connection. This dimension also rules the brain's ability to send messages to heal the body. So what's happening there? They're blocking it. They're blocking the brain's ability to send messages from the brain to the body to to create and start healing, or to heal against these foreign bodies that are coming in. It is the dimension that we need to access to work with soul evolution. They're preventing us from doing that. They're preventing us from evolving. They are blocking our cells' regeneration codes through this dimension. And most importantly, This is the dimension when blocked. When we block our experience of this dimension, when we block our connection to the version of ourselves that exists in this dimension, we are separated from our divine immortal soul. So the divine immortal soul exists in the 10th dimension and above, but the 10th dimension is sort of the seat of the divine immortal soul. So when we block our third dimensional access to the 9th dimension, we block the connection. We sever the connection. We sever the connection from the body, physical, to the divine immortal soul. Again, the separation from the spirit, of spirit and matter. So, that was a lot of words. But now, hopefully, you can understand at a spiritual and consciousness level what we're dealing with. So light language, I think, is facilitated through the stellar gateway, which the 9th dimension is part of that. But look, I think we also access the tribal languages of our ancestors, which come from 3D, because we're here on Earth. And we are third dimensional beings. So I think that light language can come from beings at any and all dimensions, but how it channels through the body is through the stellar gateway. I know that was a lot. I know that's probably going to take a little bit to like repetition and revisiting to really be able to tap deeply into that. And, you know, look, this is really what I desire you to do, is allow that information to sit in your system and be discerning, right? Be discerning. Take what serves you, leave the rest. Take this information, allow it to sit in your system, ask for your own guidance, ask for your own clarity, ask to be shown how that's relevant to you. Ask to be, quarks, Quarks. Ask to be shown how it's relevant for you. Ask to be shown, what information you need to be given to move forward from this point with the information that we've given you today. For me, it's really important that you have this reference point of us as multidimensional beings as you move through the rest of this event, and that you understand how we're being controlled and manipulated at these different levels of consciousness. And, for me, when this thing first came out, I was like, it's a weapon. Like, I could feel in the energy of it. It's a weapon. So why would a weapon be created against humanity? Humanity, it's a power play, it's control, it's manipulation. And unfortunately, the global elite of this planet are benefiting financially and otherwise from this fear pandemic. And so they are perpetuating it and inciting it. But look, we are such easy puppets because of our 3D experience and because of our ability to be affected by our divisiveness, right? And our absolutes and our black and white, the way that we live. And so we're very easily manipulated. And so for me, I feel like, there are on-planetary forces that are off-planetary beings or are hybrids of off-planetary beings that are facilitating the creation of these things. But they're also being manipulated, right? They're being manipulated by off-planetary forces. That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to connect with me on social media and reach out. I love hearing from you. And if you want more of me, real, raw, and uncensored, make sure to join the Wealth Witch Telegram channel. It's my free channel where I share all of my random daily musings, as well as the information that I feel like is important and pertinent to my community. We've put a link to the Telegram channel in the show notes, so make sure to come join us over there if that intrigues you. Remember, wealth is a mindset, and you are the most powerful creator in your reality. Until next time, this is the Wealth Witch signing off.